Hi all, and welcome back to the Macbeth Explained Annotate With Me series. In today's video, we're going to be looking at Act 3, Scene 4, the famous banquet scene from Macbeth. This is a really important scene. It marks a really important turning point in Macbeth's characterization, as well as the relationship between Macbeth and Lady Macbeth, and as well Macbeth's reputation and the way that he's seen by the other characters, specifically the lords. So because this is quite a long scene, I will be explaining most of it, but I will be mostly focusing on key quotations and things that are really important to Macbeth's character arc and Lady Macbeth. If you would like to pause the video now, go get your copy of the text. I have pre-annotated this scene to save time, and so if you need to pause as I go through the annotations to make your own annotations, please feel free to do so, and just press play when you are ready. So scene 4, the same hall in the palace. So we are in the royal palace, and this is the banquet scene. A banquet prepared, enter Macbeth, Lady Macbeth, Ross, Lennox, lords and attendants. The lords and the servants come in. Macbeth says, you know your own degrees, so you know your own ranks, because people of different ranks would sit at different times. So know your own ranks, sit down, at first and last the hearty welcome. The lords say, thanks to your majesty. Macbeth says, ourself will mingle with society and play the humble host. A hostess keeps her state, but in time we will require her welcome. So Macbeth so far seems to be in a good mood. He is welcoming the lords, telling them to sit down. He's saying that he's going to mingle with the guests. Lady Macbeth is going to keep her state for now. She's going to stay in the throne at the head of the room, but later on she will also come and mingle with the guests. Lady Macbeth says, pronounce it for me, sir, to all our friends, for my heart speaks they are welcome. So she makes it sound as if the guests are very welcome. Both of them keep up this appearance of being courteous, polite, welcoming, affectionate towards their guests. This opening, where Macbeth and Lady Macbeth are very much in control of themselves and their appearances, will contrast with what happens later on when they slowly start to lose control. The first murderer appears at the door. So Macbeth carries on just speaking to the guest so he doesn't lose face. He says, see, they encounter thee with their heart's thanks. Both sides are even. Here, I'll sit in the midst, be large in mirth. Anon will drink and measure the table round. So he tells the guests, help yourselves, be large in mirth, like drink as much as you want. I will be drinking, we'll have like a round together. Like we'll have basically like a toast, and he'll sit amongst the guests. So he's kind of mingling with the guests as an excuse almost to kind of approach the door and go speak to the murderers. So we have this quick exchange between him and the murderers. Approaching the door, he says, there's blood on your face, to one of the murderers. First murderer says, 'tis Banquo's then. It's Banquo's blood on my face. Macbeth says, 'tis better thee without than he within. Is he dispatched? It's better that you are here than Banquo, basically. Is he dispatched? Again, we've got the word dispatched, like the word business, indeed, and all these words that Macbeth tends to use instead of the word murder. Have you gotten rid of him? The first murderer says, my lord, his throat is cut. That I did for him. Macbeth says, thou art the best of cutthroats. Yet he's good that did the like for Fleance. If thou didst it, thou art the nonpareil. If you killed Fleance, you are going to be the nonpareil, the best, like the best of all the murderers. And nonpareil means without equal. So the first murderer says, most royal sir, Fleance is escaped. So Macbeth is at first in a good mood because Banquo's dead, and then he's saying, right, I'm going to be in an even better mood if Fleance is also dead. But of course the first murderer tells him Fleance has escaped. Macbeth says, then comes my fit again. I had else been perfect, whole as the marble, founded as the rock, and broad and general as the casing air. If he'd found out that Fleance was dead, he would have been perfect. He would have been whole and strong as like marble or rock. He would have felt as free as the air that surrounds them. But now I am cabined, cribbed, confined. And so here we have a metaphor but also alliteration, cabin, cribbed, confined. This is a really memorable quote, and it shows us that this fear and paranoia that Macbeth is feeling makes him feel trapped, yet confined and cribbed, like trapped or locked up. And claustrophobic as well. If you're in a cabin, you're in a small place. It's like almost the walls are closing in on him. He's implying that he won't feel free of his doubts and his fears and his paranoia, knowing that Fleance is alive, that he's almost trapped. He can't escape his thoughts and his fears. Bound in saucy doubts and fears, yeah? The things that are trapping him is his own doubts and fears. But Banquo's safe, but at least Banquo's sorted, like that's no longer a problem. The first murderer says, "I, my good lord, yes. Safe in a ditch he bides, with 20 trenched gashes on his head, the least a death to nature." He's saying, yeah, don't worry, he is definitely dead. He's lying in a ditch and I stabbed him in the head 20 times. And even the smallest stab wound would have been enough to kill him. So the first murderer is basically telling Macbeth, don't worry, like he is definitely dead. He wouldn't have survived one of the stabbings at his head. And I stabbed him 20 times. So you don't have to worry about that. Macbeth says, thanks for that. And then he says a really key quotation here. He says, "There the grown serpent lies. The worm that's fled hath nature that in time will venom breed, no teeth for the present." So in this extended metaphor, the grown serpent that's lying, the grown serpent that's dead is Banquo. The worm that's fled, the worm here meaning like a baby serpent, is Fleance. And what he's saying is that now that Fleance is dead, yeah, there the grown serpent lies. Fleance has run away. He's the worm that's fled. He hath no teeth for the present. At the moment, Fleance is young. He isn't going to be a problem for Macbeth right now. He's not going to be capable of harming Macbeth like a snake that has, like a baby snake that has no teeth. But in time will venom breed. But a baby snake will eventually grow into a full snake and be able to bite you and poison you. And what he's saying is that Fleance won't always be a child. He won't always be harmless. He will eventually grow up and he will have venom. He will be able to harm or kill Macbeth. Not only venom in the sense that he will be dangerous to Macbeth, but also Macbeth might be implying that if Fleance won't only be able to hurt him, he will have good reason to hurt him. And of course, this could link back as well to last scene where, as Banquo tells his son to run away, he also tells his son, "Thou mayst avenge, you have to avenge me." And so here Macbeth is predicting Fleance isn't a problem right now, but he will be a problem later on, and he'll have good reason to want to come after Macbeth. But there's nothing to be done now, so he tells the murderer, "Get thee gone, go away. Tomorrow we'll hear ourselves again, like we'll speak again soon." Exit the murderer. Lady Macbeth says, "My royal lord, you do not give the cheer." She's kind of reminding him, "Oh, right, you were meant to be drinking a toast with the guests." Like she's reminding him, you're in the middle of the banquet. It's your responsibility to kind of mingle with the guests. She says, "The feast is sold that is not often vouched, while 'tis a making. 'Tis given with welcome. To feed were best at home. From thence the sauce to meat is ceremony. Meeting were bare without it." She's saying you might, like, our guests might as well be eating at home if you're not going to, like, the whole point is that you're at the banquet, that there should be ceremony and toasts and cheers and things like that, like they're spending time with the king. Otherwise they might as well be eating at home. So she's reminding him, like, of his duty, like you're the one that's meant to be kind of carrying this feast. They're trying to keep up appearances, and Macbeth says, "Oh, sweet remembrancer. Oh, thank you, my sweet remembrancer." He's calling her sweet and saying, "Thank you for reminding me of what I need to do." Now, good digestion, weight and appetite, and health on both. And he does like a kind of cheer and tells the guests like drink and eat. Lennox says, "May it please your highness, sit." So one of the lords invites Macbeth to come and sit with them. Then the ghost of Banquo enters and sits in Macbeth's place. Macbeth says, "Here had we now our country's honour roofed, were the graced person of our Banquo present, who may I rather challenge for unkindness than pity for mischance." So Macbeth here is sort of saying, oh, the kind of best people are gathered here. It's a shame that Banquo wasn't here. I wonder if he's like skipped the feast out of unkindness, or if something bad has happened to him. He's trying to kind of casually bring up the fact that, oh, wonder why Banquo's not here. Ross says, "His absence, sir, lays blame upon his promise." Like Ross is kind of saying, yeah, it's like, why promise to be here if he's not going to be here? "Pleased your highness, to grace us with your royal company. So there's a seat at the table that's empty. That might have been the seat that was originally reserved for Banquo, but the laws are saying, take the seat here and come and sit with us. But of course, we know that while Macbeth was talking, the ghost of Banquo took that seat, that empty seat. So now that the laws are saying, well, come and sit with us, Macbeth says, the table's full. So here, this is the first time that Macbeth becomes aware that something is up. The audience has seen Banquo's ghost arrive. Macbeth has clearly not realised, so we're building that tension. He's saying, well, there is no free seat. Lennox says, here is a place reserved, sir. Yeah, look, there's a seat right here. Where? Says Macbeth. Lennox says, here, my good lord. What is it that moves your highness? Then Macbeth says, which of you have done this? So here we see that Macbeth has noticed Banquo. And he's kind of in shock. And the lords notice, what's up? And he says, which of you have done this? The lords say, what, my good lord? Then Macbeth says, thou canst not say I did it. Don't say that I did it. Never shake your gory locks at me. And here he's speaking directly to Banquo. He can see Banquo now. What he's saying here is, you can't say that I did it. Never shake your bloody head at me. So if you remember, we know that he was stabbed. Banquo was stabbed 20 times in the head. So his locks of hair would be drenched with blood. And here, through Macbeth's words, we can tell that Banquo would be sat at the table and kind of shaking his bloody head at Macbeth. And he might be shaking his head in blame, accusation. It might be that he's disappointed by Macbeth's betrayal or disgusted by it. It's definitely shaking your head at someone is sort of an indication of disappointment or disappointment or disgust. So here we can tell that Macbeth is sort of feeling judged by Banquo's ghost, and he kind of doesn't want to take responsibility for what happened. He says, you can't say that I did it. Ross says, gentlemen, rise. His highness is not well. So all the guests start standing up saying, oh, there's something wrong with Macbeth. Lady Macbeth tries to gain control of the situation. She says, sit, worthy friends. No, my good friends, sit back down. My lord is often thus, and has been from his youth. Pray you, keep seat. The fit is momentary. Upon a thought he will again be well. If much you note him, ye shall offend him and extend his passion. She's saying, no, please, just sit back down. Don't worry, Macbeth has been like this since he was young. He has these like very short fits, these short momentary fits. Just sit down. He's going to be well again in a second. If you act like you're noticing what's happening with him, he'll get more upset. So better pretend like nothing is happening. So here we see Lady Macbeth very much thinking on her feet, how quickly she can come up with this lie to cover for Macbeth's behaviour and also to try to gain some sort of control over the situation. But it shows us her intelligence, how quick-witted she is as well. And of course, her talent for deception. She says, feed and regard him not, just eat and ignore him. And then she speaks to Macbeth, are you a man? And here we're going to see in the next, in this little exchange between Macbeth and Lady Macbeth, that she tries to use the same techniques as she does earlier. She tries to go for his masculinity as a way of manipulating him, except that we're going to see in the next few lines that this time it does not work. And again, if you remember earlier, I said we're going to see a change in Macbeth here. This is a turning point for Macbeth's character and character arc. We're going to see now that Macbeth is no longer the person he was at the beginning. And so Lady Macbeth's techniques of manipulation don't work on him anymore. He answers her straight away. I, and a bold one, that dare look on that which might appall the devil. So he answers her without hesitation. He knows that he's a man. Not only that, he knows that he's brave because he says, I dare look at something that will make the devil himself be shocked. So he answers her with a lot of self-assurance, a lot of confidence here, much more than he had earlier on in the play, almost as if he's sort of, the deeper he falls into his madness, the more confident he actually becomes. Lady Macbeth says, oh, proper stuff, oh, rubbish. This is the very painting of your fear. This is just an image, a representation of your fear. She's absolutely correct here. She says, this is the air-drawn dagger which you said led you to Duncan. She's reminding him, look, you've had a hallucination like this before. Seeing Banquo's ghost is the same thing as seeing the dagger that you said led you to Duncan. And she knows that at the time Macbeth realised that was a hallucination. So she's trying to tell him, look, this is a hallucination as well. It's just a painting, a representation of your fears. So this shows us Lady Macbeth's intelligence, the fact that she completely understands exactly what's going on in Macbeth's head and she's trying to remind him of it. But also it shows us the the trust between Macbeth and Lady Macbeth, because we find out that even though this happened to him while he was away from her, he must have told her about it. And so there's a clear sense that Macbeth always tells Lady Macbeth about things that happened to him, implying the sort of trust and intimacy between them. Of course, again, we are going to see that change as the scene develops. She says, all these flaws and starts, imposters to true fear. Like, oh, like the way you're feeling right now is an imposter. It's not real fear. It's made up fear. It's not based on anything real. She said, would well become your behavior right now, what you're seeing right now, would well become a woman's story at a winter's fire, authored by her granddam, told by her grandmother. So she's using again the idea of femininity, a woman's story told by her grandmother. She's saying this whole story of what you're seeing right now is like a woman's story told in the winter by her grandmother. And again, she's trying to imply here that he's unmanly or that he lacks masculinity because of his fear, and using the language of femininity to imply and connote weakness. But again, it does not work. She says, shame itself. Why do you make such faces? When all is done, you look but on a stool. Like, when you think about it, you're literally staring at a stool, like an empty chair. That's all you're looking at. Macbeth says, prithee, see here, please look, behold, look. Lo, how say you? How can you say that I'm making things up? Just look. Because Macbeth can see the ghost clear as day. Lady Macbeth can't, and he doesn't understand how she can't see it. He says, what care I? And now you can tell that he's no longer talking to her, he's talking to the ghost. If thou canst nod, speak to. Oh, you can nod at me? Well, speak to me too. He's asking for the ghost to speak to him. He says, if charnel houses and our graves must send those that we bury back, our monuments shall be the maws of kites. Charnel houses are almost like places where you'd bury bones and bits of dead bodies, things like that. So he's saying if graves and graveyards would send those that we bury back, if graves rejected the dead bodies that we bury, then when we all die, we'll all end up in the maws of kites. Kites is a type of sort of bird of prey, like a hawk. So they'd basically be eaten by like birds of carrion, birds that eat dead flesh. So you're saying, well, if graves are rejecting corpses now, when everyone dies, they're just going to end up getting eaten by birds. Ghost of Banquo vanishes. So the ghost of Banquo disappears. Lady Macbeth says, what? Quite unmanned by folly, like your madness makes you less of a man. Macbeth doesn't even address it. He says, if I stand here, I saw him. Listen, just as I am here, I saw him stand there. Lady Macbeth says, fie, for shame. Macbeth says something really interesting here. And this is a sort of reference to the disruption of the natural order. But of course, we know that Macbeth isn't seeing something real right now. It's just his interpretation. He says, blood has been shed ere now, before now. Much blood has been spilled in the olden time. Before human statute purged the gentle wheel, before we had laws to sort of control like bloodshed and crime, much blood was shed by humankind in the past. Aye, and since too murders have been performed, too terrible for the ear. The times have been that when the brains wear out, the man would die, and there an end. But now they rise again. He's saying, like, murder isn't something new. It's been happening since the dawn of time. Blood has been shed. Murders have been committed. But normally, if you kill someone, when the brains are out, the man would die and they're an end. That's it. When, you kill someone, that's it. They're dead and nothing more happens. But now he's saying they rise again, but now the dead are coming back to life. And we know that this is a hallucination, but to Macbeth, it's interesting because his first hallucination with the dagger, he was clearly aware of what it was. He was, false creation from the heat oppressed mind. Here he doesn't realize this at all. And it's almost as if his explanation is this reversal of the natural order of things, where if something dies, it's dead. But now things that are dead don't stay dead. And this could be because of the guilt that he carries, or because he knows that the regicide he committed would be against God and against nature. It still ties to the disruption of the natural order, even though we know that, of course, it's Macbeth's interpretation is incorrect. He's just hallucinating. So he says, but now they rise again with 20 mortal murders on their crowns. And they have 20 mortal murders on their heads. the 20 mortal murders is, of course, a reference to the 20 stab wounds that Banquo received from the murderers that killed him. And the crown is the head. So he's talking about the stab wounds in Banquo's head, but more importantly than that, he uses the word crown. The word crown here means head, but of course it has connotations of royalty, and it links, both in Macbeth's head and to the audience, it links Banquo to royalty. And push us from our stools, yeah, and they take these dead that have come back to life, take our seat. This is more strange than such a murder is. Lady Macbeth says, "My worthy lord, your noble friends do lack you." Like, she changes her tone, and you can tell from the length of her lines that she's lost power and control over Macbeth. Like, her lines are much shorter now. They used to be, like, at the beginning, her lines are usually longer than Macbeth's when they're speaking. Now it's the other way around. She's kind of, the shorter her lines get, the less kind of control and power she has over Macbeth. She's realised at this point that there's no point in being harsh with him. There's no point in insulting him. He's kind of not even acknowledging it at this point. She's realised that type of manipulation isn't going to help with Macbeth. So she kind of becomes a little bit more gentle. She's using, positive words like worthy and noble. She's just trying to gently remind him, look, your guests are waiting for you. And it works. He says, "I do forget. Do not muse at me, my worthy friends. I have a strange infirmity which is nothing to those that know me." So he kind of confirms the lie that Lady Macbeth said earlier. So this gentler tone kind of works, and he says, "Oh, yep, I forgot." And he speaks to the lords and he says, "Please, I'm really sorry. I can tell you're wondering what's happening. It's just a strange illness. Anyone that knows me wouldn't be too surprised by this." So he tries to kind of re-establish a tone of calm. "Come, love and health to all, then I'll sit down." So let's drink a toast to love and health to everyone, and then I'll sit down. "Give me some wine. Fill full, I drink to the general joy of the whole table, and to our dear friend Banquo, whom we miss. Would he were here, to all and him with us, and all to all." So he makes a toast to the room, to everyone, to the general joy of the table, so all of the guests, and he even says to our dear friend Banquo. And it's really interesting here that he's changed his tone about Banquo, maybe out of fear for seeing the ghost, or maybe just reminding himself that he did used to be Banquo's friend. And so he makes a toast to his guests and to Banquo, to all to him with us, and all to all. So he makes the cheer, the sort of toast. The Lord say, "Our duties and the pledge," and they cannot all toast and all drink. Re-enter the ghost of Banquo. And now Macbeth's tone changes again. Really aggressive, really harsh. You can tell from the exclamation marks, that he's probably shouting or talking loudly at this point. He's saying, "Avaunt, yeah, go away, quit my sight. Let the earth hide thee." Yeah, let the earth, he's basically saying that go back to your grave. Let the ground and the dirt hide you. "Thy bones are marrowless," yeah, your bones are without marrow. "Thy blood is cold. Thou hast no speculation in those eyes which thou dost glare with." Like, the eyes that you're glaring at me with, they have no thought in them. So here, not only is he shouting in front of everyone, the things that he's saying, like, "Let the earth hide you, go back to your grave, your bones don't have marrow, your blood is cold, there's no thought behind your eyes," make it really, really obvious that he's talking to, like, whoever he thinks he's talking to, or whatever he thinks he's talking to. Clearly he expects them to be dead. So he's not only making the situation worse because he's literally acting crazy and shouting at something that's not there, but he's saying things that are definitely going to raise suspicion. He's very clearly talking to someone or something that he thinks should be dead. Lady Macbeth is sort of panicking. She says, "Think of this, good peers, but as a thing of custom, 'tis no other, only it spoils the pleasure of the time." She's saying, "Oh, just think of this as something that happens often. It's just ruining the mood a little bit, but don't worry about it." And Macbeth is sort of almost now addressing what Lady Macbeth says earlier about him not being manly. He says, "What man dare, I dare. Anything that a human being dare, that a man might dare to do, I dare to do." And he names animals that at the time would have reputations for being dangerous, like the rugged Russian bear, the armed rhinoceros, the Harken tiger. So he's naming all these, like, almost like mythical, fierce animals, and he's saying, Approach thou like the rugged Russian bear, the armed rhinoceros, and the Harken tiger. Take any shape but that, and my firm nerves shall never tremble." Yeah, he wouldn't be afraid. He wouldn't tremble if Banquo's ghost had taken the shape of one of these fearsome creatures. And then he says, "Or be alive again, and dare me to the desert with thy sword, or come back to life and actually dare me to fight, and we'll go out into the wilderness and fight. If trembling I inhabit then, protest me the baby of a girl. And if I tremble then you could call me the baby of a girl. So he's saying it's not that he's a coward, and it's not that he's not brave. He's saying if he was going to, if the ghost was taking the form of a bear or a tiger or a rhinoceros, he wouldn't be afraid. If Banquo came back to life and literally dared him to fight, he would never be afraid. But it's the ghost, is Banquo's bloody ghost with all the stab wounds in his head. That's what he can't handle. That's why he can't cope with it. He says, hence, like, go away, horrible shadow, unreal mockery, hence. And he says unreal mockery. Yeah, you're just a fake mockery of the real Banquo. So here he's kind of realizing it's not real. He's telling it to go away. Ghost of Banquo vanishes. Why so? Being God, I am a man again. Pray you sit still. And now it's gone. And he says, okay, I feel myself again. Sit down, everyone. He's trying to calm. Well, he's calmer now. But of course, it's too late. It's too late to be calm. It's too late to address the laws. Lady Macbeth says to him, you have displaced the mirth, broke the good meeting with most admired disorder. Like, your chaos and your shouting has completely ruined the mood. It's displaced the mirth. It's like you got rid of all the cheerfulness and the joy in the room. And, you know, rightfully so, he was literally just yelling at an empty chair. Just kind of ruined the mood. Macbeth says, can such things be and overcome us like a summer's cloud without our special wonder? Yeah, but how can something like this happen without we should at least wonder about it? Like, of course I'm going to react to something this crazy happening. You make me strange, even to the disposition that I owe. And he's saying here a really interesting quote that gives us some insight about the way the way Lady Macbeth makes him feel. He says, you make me feel strange about how I am and how I feel. Almost as if he's saying that she makes him feel like she's judging him. She makes him feel like he's strange. He says, when now I think you can behold such sights and keep the natural ruby of your cheeks, when mine is blanched with fear. He's saying, you make me feel strange about myself. Like, almost like she's making him question himself when she can see things, that she can keep the natural ruby of her cheeks, that her cheeks will stay rosy and warm when he would go white with fear. Like, she can look at things that would terrify him and she never feels any fear. And it's making him feel strange about himself, like almost questioning himself. And he could be referring to the ghost of Banquo, but more importantly, he's probably referring here to the murder of Duncan, because he was absolutely horrified and shocked by Duncan's dead body, whereas we know for a fact that Lady Macbeth saw Duncan's dead body, but she seemingly was fine. So there's a sense here that he's kind of realizing that they're very, very different, and she makes him feel not very good about himself. But of course, when he says this, Ross kind of says, what sights, my lord? Like, what are you talking about? And here the laws want to know, what is it that Macbeth is seeing? Like, and we can tell there's definitely a little bit of suspicion growing here. Lady Macbeth realizes, right, the damage is done. Macbeth has said well more than he should have. So she says, I pray you speak not. Don't speak to him. He grows worse and worse. Question enrages him. Yet questioning him would make him angrier. At once, good night. Stand not upon the order of your going, but go at once. Don't worry about rank and ceremony and standing in the order of rank. All of you stand up, off you go. He's clearly not well. Good night. She just ends the feast and dismisses the laws, because it's literally the only way now she can regain control of the situation. Lennox says, good night and better health. Attend his majesty. Good night. Hopefully Macbeth feels better soon. A canned good night to all. Exeunt all but Macbeth and Lady Macbeth, and all the guests finally leave. But of course we can see that the damage has already been done. Macbeth says, it will have blood, they say. Blood will have blood. Yeah, you spill blood, your blood is going to be spilled. And here we sense one of the roots of Macbeth's fear, that fear of revenge, of comeuppance. And if you remember, he did speak about this much, much earlier when he's first considering the idea of killing Duncan, and he talks about those that teach bloody instructions will sort of, if you're the one that commits a violent act, that violent act will come back to harm you eventually. And he says, drinking from the poison chalice, like, violence is something that once you put that out into the world, it will come back. blood will have blood. If you spill blood, your blood will be spilled. So this idea of this kind of just sense of justice that exists in the world, almost like what we nowadays might call karma, he's very much afraid of that. Stones have been known to move and trees to speak. Yeah, again, the natural order of things being disrupted. Stones moving is, of course, something that's not possible. Trees speaking is, of course, not possible. Augurs is like prophecies or predictions or signs. And understood relations have, by magpies and chows and rooks, brought forth the secretest man of blood. What is the night? He's saying, you'd be surprised the kind of things that can betray you. Like stones can move and trees can speak, and even rooks can or birds can give away someone's secret or someone's secret murders. What is the night? What time of the night is it? So it's almost as if he's afraid that someone's going to find out and something's going to happen to him. What time is it of the night? Lady Macbeth is almost at odds with morning, which is which. Yeah, it's at the time of the night when night starts blending into morning. So very late night, early morning. Macbeth says, how sayest thou that Macduff denies his person at our great bidding? And here he's saying, why do you think it is that Macduff didn't come to the feast even though I asked him to? And here we can see that Macbeth has dealt with the things that he needed to deal with. Duncan's dead, he's now king. Banquo's dead. Fleance has run away. And so Macbeth turns his attention to the next person on his sort of list, Macduff. And here we can see that this paranoia, this fear that Macbeth is experiencing, it's not going to go away. He thought he'd feel better after Banquo died. He doesn't feel better. Fleance is missing. He doesn't feel better. He just needs the next thing now. It's almost as if his bloodlust and his paranoia is not going to be satisfied. He needs to move on to the next thing. Lady Macbeth says, did you send to him, sir? Like, did you ask for him? And he says, I hear it, by the way, but I will send. Yeah, I'll go send for him. There's not a one of them, but in his house I keep a servant feed. So he basically here, he gives us a little insight into the way that he rules. And he explains that he pays at least one servant in each of the Lord's households to kind of spy on them. So he keeps spies in all of the Lord's houses. So he's kind of saying, well, I'll find out what's going on with Macduff. Because I pay a servant in his house. He pays a servant, or he has a spy in all of the Lord's houses. I will tomorrow, and betimes I will, to the weird sisters. In the meantime, like while he waits to find out what's going on with Macduff, he's going to go back to the witches. Again, here we have the turning point. At the beginning of the play, Macbeth bumps into the witches almost by accident. We know that they're looking to meet him, but he's not looking to meet them. Whereas here, he purposely goes to seek them out. And he knows that they're evil. He knows what he's done as a result of their prophecies. And yet he still goes to them. It's almost as if he's accepted that he's now as evil as they are. And now he's saying, for I am bent to, he says, more shall they speak. He wants to get more prophecies from them. For now I am bent to know by the worst means the worst. Now I want to know the worst things that are going to happen by the worst means. The worst way to find out what's going to happen is through the witches, because of course they sell the devil. But he's trying to find out the worst. So he has to go. He's kind of, the things that he wants to find out about, he can only find out from evil sources. And he's kind of accepting that. There's no sense that he thinks he's doing the right thing, or that he thinks that the witches are good in any way, shape or form. It's the opposite. He's kind of acknowledged that they're evil, but these are evil times and an evil situation that he's in. So it makes sense that he would go back to the witches. For mine own good, all causes shall give way. I am in blood stepped in so far that should I wade no more, returning were as tedious to go over. And here we have this beautiful extended metaphor where he describes what's happened to him and what he's done as having stepped in blood. So imagine him being in a sort of lake or a sea of blood that's getting so hard he can barely keep walking. He can wade no more. Yeah, he can barely, wading is walking through water. So he spilled so much blood, he stepped so far into blood, that should I wade no more, returning were as tedious as go over. Going back would be harder than carrying on. No matter how hard what he's doing is, he spilled so much blood that going back is actually more difficult now than carrying on. He knows that everything he's done is so evil that he can never atone for it. He can never take it back. His only choice now is to keep going. And that's really interesting because this shows us he's almost changing mentality now. He's sort of accepted that he's cut off his link from God. He can no longer say amen. He's betrayed his best friend. He's betrayed his king and kin. And now he's sort of thinking, there's no way of turning back now. I can only go forward. His only solution is to sort of double down on the violence, on the evil, on the murder. And this foreshadows really well the fact that from here on out, this is when Macbeth will start developing into from a king who's committing murders to cover up his crime to a full-blown tyrant, as we will see in the future acts. And so this is definitely your key quotation. There's a lot of key quotations in this scene for Macbeth, but this quotation links in really well to the theme of guilt, to the theme of madness as well, violence, murder, betrayal. Most of the key themes, you could use this quote to explore them if you're talking about or writing about Macbeth. Strange things I have in head, that will to hand, which must be acted ere they may be scanned. He's saying, I've got strange thoughts in my head that I kind of want to act on. And I feel like I need to act before I think about these thoughts. Like, he doesn't want to examine the things in his head. He wants to start just acting now. He just wants to get things done. Lady Macbeth says, you lack the season of all natures, sleep. And she's making a really good point here. She's saying your problem is you can't sleep. And the human being, like human beings can't function without sleep. So she is definitely onto something. And of course, she's linking as well to the theme of sleep and insomnia that keeps coming up throughout the play. It's a recurring motif. We see it from the beginning with the witches. And of course, Macbeth kills Duncan while he's asleep. Macbeth is now unable to sleep, etc. And she's telling him that's what you need. You need sleep. You need to rest. The way his mind is so full of these crazy thoughts, the way he feels so claustrophobic and anxious and paranoid all the time, and he's mindful of scorpions, that's because he can't sleep. He can't rest. He doesn't have the time to sort of recover from everything that's happened. And he says, well, will to sleep. All right, let's go to bed. My strange and self-abuse is the initiate fear that wants hard use. We are yet but young indeed. And here he says something really interesting. He's saying, my strange and self-abuse, the way I feel now, my paranoia and the pain, the self-abuse, the suffering that I'm going through, is the initiate fear that wants hard use. It's the fear of someone who is an initiate, someone who's just like a novice at something. It's the novice fear that wants hard use. He's basically saying these evil things that we're doing, these murders, we're still beginners. And I feel nervous and scared because I'm just a beginner. All I need to do now is have practice. And he's basically saying that the more evil things he does, the more murders he commits, the more comfortable he'll grow with what he's doing. The less worried he'll be about it, the less anxious he will become. And he's almost, again, confirming this idea that now, from now on, the problem isn't what he's done. The problem is he just needs to double down on what he's done and he will start feeling much better about it. And of course, we know that that's exactly what he does. He sort of commits even more murders and becomes a tyrant. And all of this is a way to sort of, a really misguided way of coping with his paranoia, his fear, his guilt. At this point, there's a sense that he's kind of moving away from, his guilt has kind of led him into madness, and this madness is pushing him towards bloodshed and bloodlust. But it's almost as if that's like the only way that he can feel better, because he knows that he can't earn forgiveness. So if he's not going to earn forgiveness, he might as well just get worse and worse. And so here we see that Macbeth has kind of changed beyond, you know, there is no turning back for him here. There's not only is there no turning back, but there's no pausing either. He's not going to kind of keep things as they are right now. He's only going to get worse from here on out because it's his way of coping with things. So in this scene, you kind of see Macbeth become a much darker character. And of course, it's your interpretation whether you still have sympathy for him here or whether you lose your sympathy for him at this point in the text. We also see this scene be a turning point in the relationship between Macbeth and Lady Macbeth, with Macbeth very much gaining power in the relationship. Lady Macbeth is no longer able to manipulate him the way she was able to earlier. And she is kind of almost, she's lost her ability to control him, but she's also lost her ability to help him. She's not doing these things to hurt him when she was trying to gain control of him at the feast is because he was the one giving himself away. So she was just trying, you can tell she's just trying to help him, you know, as she covers for him. She literally says, oh, he's got an illness. She's the one that tries to manage the law. She's the one that tries to remind him to keep up appearances. So she's just trying to keep them out of harm's way, keep them from getting found out, from, you know, having their crime get found out. And so again, it's your interpretation how you want to look at the relationship, and whether this change in their relationship is a good thing or a bad thing. It's for you to sort of discuss. If you were writing an essay in answer to a question about Lady Macbeth and Macbeth's relationship, this is definitely a really important key scene. After here in the play, after this point in the play, their relationship will you will see them sort of drift apart. They won't have many scenes left together, which indicates the fact that they've sort of drifted apart a little bit. And that's Act 3, Scene 4. So that's the banquet scene. Is really important. It's very likely that it's a scene that could be picked up or selected for one of the extracts for the literature exams, the Macbeth section, because there's a lot of very important parts of this scene, a lot of very, very rich and metaphorical language that gives us a lot of information about the characters. So I highly encourage revising this scene, revising key quotes from this scene when you are preparing for your exam. As usual, if you have any questions about this scene, this act, characters, themes, assessment objectives, anything at all, please feel free to post in the comments, and I will make sure that I respond to your questions as quickly as possible. And I hope to see you all in the next video.